This is gonna be... She's gonna agree with me in 2 minutes.
Hello, what do you want?
What do you think I want?
I don't know. Honestly, maybe to get unbanned from Twitch. Can't help you with that.
Okay. When we use words should mean things, right?
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, so if words mean certain things, we should let them mean certain things. We don't have to make things like the worst word we possibly know because it like makes us feel better if we're destroying the meanings of the words, right?
Yeah, I think I would agree with you in almost every case except for this one.
Why? If that you can't just make one exception for your particular thing that you care
No, but I
about.
think I have a rational reason for this one.
What is the rational reason?
Okay, is that the definition for pedophilia, like that you're going with, is the psychological definition for pedophilia. That is, you are primarily attracted to prepubescent children, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so the problem is that that's not the psychological definition. The psychological definitions of a lot of things are actually different than the colloquial definitions or even the definitions that people use in other contexts. So like in a historical context or in a philosophical context, etc. Right?
The only possible thing I can think of is maybe legally. There might be a different legal distinction for pedophilia, but I feel like when we're talking about issues of the mind, what?
I think that's important. Like, I understand, like, why if.
But then we would probably push. We should push to change what it's legally called then, or otherwise, do we just not have a name then for people that are attracted to prepubescent children? What do we call those people?
No, you can still call it that.
No, you can't, because if you're going to say somebody attracted to a 17-year-old is a pedophile, that's not what pedophile means anymore. Now, pedophile is just an arbitrary thing that changes based on your jurisdiction. So in Sweden, being attracted to a 14 or 15-year-old is a pedophile, but 17 is okay. But in the United States, 17 makes you a pedophile if we're talking about pictures, but I guess if it's in person, then it's 15. Like,
but it seems like now you're talking about the colloquial definition, right? Which is, and it's frustrating you that it's changed colloquially from...
okay, I don't believe definitions can change. I think they either exist or they don't. If you can change them on a whim, then there is no definition. It just means whatever.
That's not how language works, though. Like,
what?
Language, like, okay, like when you take like a word, right? Like say like a word like genocide, right? There is, people misuse the word genocide all the time. It frustrates me like hell. So like, I totally understand why you're coming at it from this perspective and why this frustrates you. And I think it's valid to be frustrated, right? But the thing is that if you take like the word genocide, and this is something that I always try to keep in mind whenever I criticize someone using the word incorrectly, is like, are they at least using like one of the working definitions or like a reasonable definition? Because that word can mean different things in different contexts. For some people, especially people who are focused legally, they're going to focus purely on like the UN definition of genocide. And then some other people are going to focus, historians actually have a completely different definition of genocide, right? And there's so many different definitions. So
I agree. Here's something that somebody emailed me.
Like the context is important.
Sure, I agree. So like I would have been okay with that, right? But here's something that I think that when we fuck with the definitions of all of these words too much, we like lose our ability to understand some things. So for instance, I got I don't remember, it was a PhD history guy that emailed me, and he like demanded, he said that you can't call what happened with indigenous peoples around other countries genocide, that it was stupid to call it that. And he said the reason why was because genocide wasn't defined until like the 40s. It doesn't make sense to say that, that something that happened in the 1700s was a genocide. There was no such thing as genocide. So it doesn't make sense to say that. And technically, just by him saying that, and then also give me an explanation, I was like, I guess that kind of makes sense. The rules of the world, the things that we saw as good or bad, and the ways that we associate with each other were quite a bit different back then. So it doesn't really make sense to use the charge of genocide against a certain people when we didn't even have like that international framework or definition established. So that does make sense. So it's like, okay, sure. So I feel like having words that mean things is not only important just because of like a word meaning a thing, but it's important because it helps like bring ideas to it. If words don't mean anything, then our conversations like descend into absurdity instantly, right? Like everybody's a fascist, everybody's a groomer, everybody's a pedophile, like everything is just fucked.
Yeah, no,
So,
I'm completely with you on
well, if you're completely with me, how are you okay with like, well, for pedophile, like it's whatever. If you like somebody that's
because I think we disagree on what stage the term pedophile is at. I almost feel like you're speaking about it as if we're at like the word pedophile is just being kind of like it's only been used for a while to describe having like an exclusive or a primary attraction to prepubescent children,
yeah,
and
which is what it,
and that's the main way that it's used in most contexts, that the way it's spoken, right? But that's not actually the case. So even though like the majority of people don't even know the actual definition, right? The majority of
sure, but
people
I think that,
don't
but here's the problem
know like
is,
the details of the
okay,
definition.
if you want to just destroy the word, then you have to give me something in its place. And then also, if you want to do that, I don't think we can complain then when like conservatives complain about like teachers being groomers or whatever when they talk to kids about LGBT issues. And like people want to say, well, that's not grooming. Like, okay, yeah, but nobody knows what grooming is anymore, which is also true. Nobody knows what grooming is anymore. But like, I don't think that we can hardcore say like this word has to mean this particular thing all the time. Like that's not fair. But then be like, well, for this word, if anybody is, fuck it, right? Like I feel like you have to. If we want to fight for definitions of words, which I mean, I understand some things will colloquially change over time, but I think that has to be like a natural process, not a malevolent one, right? The changing of pedophile, I mean, anybody that likes anything that's too far apart in age or illegal, or when conservatives use groomer to describe all LGBT people, I don't think that's like a natural evolution of language over time. Like calling somebody a moron doesn't mean they have a certain IQ. Like that just naturally changed over time. That's like a purposeful like destruction of language for the intent of harming groups of people or like muddying the discourse. I think there's a difference there.
Do you think that that's what people do when they use the word pedophile
Yes.
to just describe
I don't think that
anyone
they're
who's
having
not
trouble
considered
understanding. Yeah, I don't think they're having trouble understanding what the definitions are. They just use pedophile because they want to use like the meanest possible word they can for a person they don't like. So they go to pedophile. Yes. I think that is exactly what's happening.
You see, like I just don't think that that's the case. I think the majority of people
Hold on.
use the word pedophile. I mean, maybe like the
If
type
you're
of people
looking
that
at like a 17-year-old that for all intents and purposes looks like they could be 21, and you've got like a 30-year-old, and that 30-year-old's like, wow, that 17-year-old's hot, and you're like, oh wow, like anybody that calls a person a pedophile is either fucking retarded or they're virtue signaling so fucking hard their head is about to explode. Like that's exactly what's happening there, 100%. It's just people that want to like reach for the worst word they know so that they can use it and feel as good as possible about themselves. That's the only reason. I don't think we should champion or celebrate words changing for that reason. I think that's ridiculous.
Okay, what they mean though is that you are like this person is attracted. First of all, like I really disagree with people saying that like a seven. I come at it from a Canadian context where like 16 is considered the legal age of consent anyway. So 17 is just like a weird thing. But it's just in general, it seems weird to me to like put all the hyper focus on people defining it that way. I don't know. I don't think like when you look at like the way everyone's using this word, like something like groomer, like there's like a proper definition of groomer. It's not a very like common word as the way pedo has, like that it was used in the
Groomer
music for
is
so long and all this
literally
stuff. It's
meaningless.
starting to be common.
No. Groomer is already meaningless. It means nothing. Nobody
Okay,
knows what
no,
groomer means anymore. Yeah.
I agree with you. Yeah. So I think if we were talking about the word groomer, I'd be like, yeah, 100%. The problem is like the way I often see people, particularly the distinction between pedophilia and hebephilia is only useful in a psychological context or in a law enforcement context when you're talking about like finding the person, right? And doing like a psychological evaluation. It's not actually like otherwise it's not useful for most people. The most people are
But
concerned are, is this an unlawful like
no, bullshit.
unlawful
It
or
has nothing to
or
do. No, that's
wait, is
bullshit.
it no, you're interpreting. Is it an unlawful or immoral like
No.
relation?
No. 99% of the time pedophilia is used. It's used to virtue signal judge somebody else online. Somebody says a 17-year-old is hot and somebody's like, oh, you're a pedophile. They don't care about the legality or the morality there. They're just trying to find like the biggest, baddest word they can use to like attack somebody. That's it. It's not because they're so intensely focused on making some important legal distinction. Or even like, here's something. I bet if I were to pull progressives online, if a 40-year-old was hitting on an 18 or 19-year-old, I bet over 50% of them would say, oh yeah, that guy might be a pedophile. Guaranteed. Over 50% of progressives would pull yes on that. And that's not even There's no
That's
legal
insane.
there. There's no morality, arguably. Is it wrong?
Well,
Maybe. Is it
they would
creepy?
probably
Yeah,
say,
but
they would say there's a moral issue.
maybe, sure. But it's not pedophilia. It literally is it has absolutely nothing to do with pedophilia at all.
Okay. Well, okay. So why do you think the problem is, again, you are looking at it from a psychological perspective, and that is not the way the majority. Most people are not concerned about the psychology of a pedophile, right?
Well, but maybe we should be concerned because we have these.
About protecting children.
No, you're not. No. If you're talking about pedophile and you're expanding that word, that is the opposite of protecting children, because now you're describing, you're destroying any of the understanding that you have about any of these topics or terms. How can that be? How is it protecting children more to call people that are attracted to 17-year-olds with big boobs pedophiles? What child are you protecting?
I'm not talking about the consequences of it, which is what you just mentioned. I'm talking about like what they actually, what they think they're doing, right? Like they're using that term because they feel like it would apply. And they think that it applies because they think that it's an adult taking advantage of a child, and what is determined whether or not someone is a child obviously is very different based on different regions and different time periods and all that kind of stuff. So in a psychological way, the distinction between pedophilia and hebephilia and ebephilia and all those things are very important, because when it comes to treating people or finding out like who did this and all that kind of stuff, it's
okay. Here's a question.
Distinguish it.
Why can't you just
not for the average?
Why can't you just call a person that chases like really young people like that or vulnerable? Why can't you just call them like creepy, or weird, or even like exploitative? Why call them a pedophile?
I don't know.
Wait, but you're defending it. So
I'm defending it because it's the colloquial term, like it's the way people use it on average.
Okay, if I wanted to call like gay people the F, and that becomes colloquial, would you still defend that? Because it was for the longest time, but we argued against that and we changed how people use the word.
It becomes colloquial and it becomes like the way. I mean, that's what happened with queer.
No, queer was reclaimed and no longer means what it used to mean.
Okay.
People don't use queer as an insult anymore. Queer is used by philosophers that want to sound edgy when they're talking about strange things, and it's generally used by LGBT people to describe like they don't want to be specific. I'm queer. That's it. But you don't hear queer as an insult as much anymore, right?
But that's part of like how language evolves and changes and all.
No, hold on.
And the problem is, I'm saying that
wait.
I'm a pretty conservative with language change.
No.
But if you look at the term pedophile, like you're
we're not talking about like what is right now. We're talking about what should be. We have arguments about prescriptive use of language, right? Yes.
Okay.
Because descriptively, you would, well, maybe you would, I don't know, but most people would never defend calling people slurs. They would say we should change that. But if I were to like say, well, hold on, colloquially, this is just how we call people. We call people surnames. That's cool. People would say, no, that's not cool. We need to change this. They would try to change the way that those words are used, right? So why couldn't I argue the same for like actual words that mean actual things with important distinctions? So like pedophilia is a person that is attracted to somebody primarily with prepubescent features. Why would I not fight to have that distinction that exists? There's a million other words to describe people that go after predators, exploitative people, could be groomers that go after young people. But if you're trying to fuck a 17-year-old, you're not a pedophile.
Okay, so I would agree with you there. If you're talking about like, being prescriptive rather than descriptive, that's different. Sorry. What would make sense to me, I totally understand the need for a distinction between like, the type of child that you are attracted to. And obviously there's like a moral difference and weight difference based on the type of child you're attracted to, right? And I think, but the thing is, even in pedophilia, they have distinctions, right? Like the type of person who goes for like 3-year-olds is probably going to be very different than the type of person who goes for 8-year-olds, and all those things. So I just think on average, like there's probably a useful distinction, and we should probably add maybe like to solve your situation, there should be another word, right?
We already have the words.
But my argument is that we don't actually, because that's only from a psychological perspective. Like that.
But I'm saying the words are there, but people are fighting to misappropriate them and use them incorrectly. But why not like just defend the definitions that already exist?
But your version of incorrectly is using it incorrectly from a psychological perspective.
It's a description of a psychological attraction.
If you look up the term pedophile in say like the Oxford Dictionary, it's not going to give you the psychological definition. It's going to say, from what I'm guessing, you can look it up.
It says a person who is sexually attracted to children. Well, not underage, because underage could be 17.
Yeah, to prepubescent children, right?
It just says children, but
okay. Sure. So yeah, so it's actually particularly broad by just saying children. So because of that,
No, I
well,
think children implies like generally like prepubescent.
okay, do you think, okay,
Generally
do you think,
speaking, I think in
do you
this
think a
case,
10-year, do you think a 10-year-old who's, had her period is,
it
is not a
depends on the
child?
10-year-old, especially if it's a girl, right?
Yeah, I mean, I would say
If
in our society,
like you're asking me that
I would
like if
say
it's a
in the
10-year-old that
majority
is
of
like
society, we
already
would
like heavily
say,
gone through a lot of puberty, then no, it probably wouldn't be necessarily pedophilia. But if it's like a 16-year-old that hasn't like
I'm
gone
not
through
talking
puberty,
about pedophilia. I'm talking about child, like the term child.
oh,
'Cause it used the term child.
I don't know. It depends, I guess. Like,
I would say like like the colloquial definition of child in at least Western society is defined as a 12-year-old, like for sure. Like a 12-year-old would fit into child. Unless you wanted me to bring out the
okay, so
Orthodox Judaism
so
here.
then do you think that we should just call everybody that's attracted to anybody below 18 a pedophile?
No.
Then what are you arguing with?
Well, what first of all, you were the one that wanted to talk to me. I
Well,
tweeted
because
those things.
you argued on Twitter, you did a call out, so
Well, I wasn't actually calling at you. I was calling out. I was particularly posting those two posts that were posted by members of your own community. Because one of the things that I like about your community is how often they debate one another and discuss one another with one another and all that kind of stuff.
sure. But
And
you're
so
calling out my
those are
ideas, basically, the things that I believe in. So of course I'm gonna respond.
okay. I actually didn't know that those are your ideas when I posted that. I just
Okay.
because I just like was screening through it. But now that I do know, okay.
Uh-huh.
Now that I do know, the reason why I called it out is when I posted those two things, I thought I've always felt uncomfortable whenever someone, because it's like a meme in like the intellectual kind of community. I'm sure you've heard it before, like where someone's talking about, say, someone being creepy with like a 14-year-old or something, and they're like a grown adult. And when you make a comment about it, like the other person will be like, actually, okay, it's not
Sure. So
pedophilia,
actually,
it's
I'm okay. I'm
pedophilia.
actually now that I'm reading your tweet, I'm gonna take an even stronger stance than what I did before. I think your tweet
Okay.
is ultra cringe and super destructive. So you said, "This is
Okay.
why it's cringe when people go, it's actually hebephilia." Like, yes, you're technically correct, but you just come across like you're trying to downplay it and are clearly missing the point. So you're making the argument here that we actually should just reach for the worst possible word because the words that we use actually don't fucking matter. We just need to find the most moral gravity that we can and hurl that at somebody in order to fuck with them. That's what
That
you're
is
saying
such
in
an
that sense.
uncharitable
No,
response.
no, because you're
That is,
saying that you're downplaying something by giving the technically correct definition. That sounds like you're saying like, well, fuck it. Who cares what the word means? I'm trying to have a moral condemnation over here. That's exactly what you're saying.
I said, first of all, I said that it comes across like you're downplaying it, which I'll stand by. That it does come across on average when people do that.
Okay, but then
And
so then you have
I,
to agree with Vosh's community. Maybe you do. So then Vosh's community is right, and I'm totally wrong when they're constantly saying like, "Oh, there's a genocide, and I'm like, "There's not a genocide against LGBT people." I'm like, "Oh, sounds like you're just trying to downplay it." Well, no, there could be really bad things happening without it being a genocide. Much the same that it could be really creepy. A 50-year-old creeping on 17-year-olds could be really fucking creepy without it being a pedophile. Like, I don't think we have to
and if
reach.
I was
You're
talking
arguing
to a
that we need to find
psychologist,
words with the biggest
no,
moral gravity to throw at people.
doesn't.
Yeah. Hi.
Okay, if I was talking to someone who's like a psychologist or they're interested in psychology and they were discussing like the psychology of it, or if I was listening to a podcast on like that kind of topic and they're talking about the concept of pedophilia and all the intricacies around it, and they use the terms hebephilia and ebophilia and pedophilia distinctly, I would never think, okay, that person, they're trying to downplay it. Okay, that's totally fine. And that's why I literally said, you're technically correct. Okay, like in it, referring to anyone who does that. So people can be technically correct. Thing is, the way I often see it used, right, is in a way where someone is almost trying to downplay it. I've seen it particularly where someone is talking about like, oh, like, is this person safe to have in the server? I've heard that they do this or something like that. Like, oh, well, it's not that big of a deal because they're 14 and 13-year-olds, so right. Things like that. I heard people referring to like the Milo Yiannopoulos in that kind of way, and they always kind of bring up the actually it's hebephilia. It's like no, you knew what the majority of people meant when they said
Well,
pedophile.
then just
They
don't
were talking
misspeak. Just
about
say they were creeping on minors. Like we have words for this. We have so
yeah,
many words.
But this is you were.
I think the
using
English language doesn't we know we have like
psychological
over 650,000 words in this language? Like, why do we have to like fucking fuck up other words?
But you are acting as if it's not the definition. We looked it up. In the definition, it says, okay, that a pedophile is defined, right? In a non-psychological context, it described that a pedophile is defined as someone who is attracted to children. Children, the concept of what is a child is very vague and depends on a lot of things, so it can be different in different cultures. And
Okay, here, so this is an example.
So in our society, we would all consider a 12 or 13-year-old still a child.
So this is
because of that, you are wrong about the definition.
So let me.
If you like the psychological definition.
It's not about what I like. It's about being clear with our terms. So here's an example of the type of harm that's caused, I think, when we fuck with these words like this. Okay, so here's a guy in my YouTube chat, Abba, and then he's using the weird @ sign, and then he has preach. So he says, so his Vosh genocide comparison isn't analogous because what's happening to LGBTQ isn't close to genocide. Hebephilia and pedophilia is pretty much the same to most people. Right? So now I think that a lot of people actually agree with that. But the problem is just thinking that is putting you in a place where now we've made more children at risk. Because if in your mind, the type of person who's a pedophile would be the same type of person who would fuck an attractive 17-year-old, now you have no concept of who might actually be at risk or who might actually be a danger to certain children. Right? Because in your mind, like, well, would you fuck a 9-year-old? No, I don't think I would. Oh, cool. Well, you'd probably never fuck a 16-year-old or a 17-year-old then because that's all pedophilia, right? That's not true, though. That's not even remotely true. But by destroying the definition here, you're actually inhibiting people's ability to even understand the concept. The type of person that would fuck a 9-year-old is way fucking different than the type of person that would fuck an attractive 17-year-old.
Okay, so I think that's a more valid argument.
That's
right. Well, that's a different argument than you were saying before.
No, it's the exact same argument. The argument is that we need to have words that have definitions so that we can understand anything in society.
Sure, but you're arguing for a specific definition, not the definition that is currently the majority definition. You want to take, it's like when I say I like using the historical version of the word genocide and I want to apply it everywhere and everyone should use it, okay? But that means that I am changing the definition, and I might have very valid reasons to do so, and I think you do have valid reasons to do so, but it doesn't mean it's necessarily what you're saying of like just completely changing the definition.
I don't want to completely change the definition. I just want to go by like what pedophilia is understood to be in terms of.
Okay, but pedophilia is understood to be attraction to a child. So, and what determines a child is going to probably depend on the majority of what people consider children. Right now, we are living in a society, a majority of our society, okay, pushes childhood incredibly. Right? So it probably seems a lot older than it would in other societies, or I don't know, or in different countries. In Canada, someone would never consider a 17-year-old a child.
Okay, I think we've hit ideological bedrock, and there's no budging out of this position. Is there anything else you'd like to share with the stream, Aristocracy TV?
Why do you say TV at the end?
Isn't that your name?
Yeah, you know Hassan made fun of me for having TV at my...
Oh, yeah, he called you a clout chaser because you had TV at the end of your name. And then I think he banned you. Did he? Or was he just looking at your tweets?
He was just looking at my tweets. He never banned me. I actually don't even think he knows who I am.
He probably does, actually. I won't reveal who, but I've heard that he actually spends a shocking amount of time like keeping tabs on my corner of the universe, which is kind of sad. But so he probably did know who you were, and that's why he got so triggered.
He seems like a very sensitive person, which I would be a complete hypocrite for criticizing him for that because I'm sensitive too.
Yeah.
He seems like a very
Would you call him a pedophile?
Oh my God. Well, if the colloquial definition for pedophile is to be sensitive, then sure, but it's not.
Okay, just curious.
I see language. I'm not a language expert or anything. I just like learning different languages, and I just see language as a tool. So I'm always just going to use the best tool. That's why I always like agreeing on definitions before I debate or discuss something, because I really don't care about a definition. I just want to use whatever the easiest definition is in the moment.
Okay.
So that's why I put on a different lens in different situations.
Okay. Cool. Gotcha. Well, hey, listen, Aristocracy. It's been really fun chatting. We appreciate it. Friend of the stream.
Thank you.
Yeah. Stay safe.
I love your community. That's why I quoted them. I think they're so cool.
Oh.
I don't know why they put up with you though.
Those tweets earlier, those were 100% fake, right? The text message tweets.
The text messages? I really do not think they're fake. They're not mine, but they're not. I really don't think they're fake because I've gotten very similar ones.
There are so many signals in here. But how old are you? 16? I'm sure you haven't had a nice guy like me treat you right. Is that why you think you're lesbian? Like, this is such a... You need an older man like me who's in their mid-30s with their own car home,
like
and soon...
they're checking off all the boxes. Like it seems like something that someone would make up, and I don't blame you for thinking that. But I'm telling you, I've gotten like legit DMs that are just as cringe.
Okay. All right, well, listen.
It might be fake. It might be fake. I don't know, but I wouldn't be surprised if it wasn't.
Okay. I love you. It's been fun. I hope one day you expand your dating pool outside of Orthodox Jewish people.
Oh my God.
I was going to make a real cringe joke because you made that cringe joke about Brittany, but I actually can't bring myself to be that cringe. So, okay. I love you. Have fun. Bye, buddy.
Yeah, bye.
I can't get away with the same jokes women make. I'm going to let you guys in on a little secret. That text that she showed looks fake as fuck, but it could also actually be 100% real because men do be texting some insanely fucking cringy shit sometimes.
Yes. Good day.
Yeah, what's up, buddy?
Hey, I turned on your stream for 2 seconds and
Big
I was
mistake.
like, ooh, I like this one.
Yeah.
You know what I actually like doing every time you do an 8-hour stream? I like to just join in and be like, just before I join, I guess, like, what's the topic? Is it going to be pedophiles,
aliens, incest, you know? Who knows?
Hey, man, that's consistent content.
Yeah.
XQC was in line when he said it's
True.
top
I
tier.
try my best to deliver, you know? I don't want to fade into irrelevancy now that I'm streaming on YouTube.
I will say, you've been pretty consistent. I was really shocked when you did the Martin Shkreli interview. I was like, oh, shit, this guy. That was really good, by the way. Good job on that one.
Thanks a lot, bud.
Yes, so just to be clear, when the woman who came on before Aristocracy, she basically was saying in response to somebody making a correction, right? They're like, oh, it's not pedophilia, it's hebephilia, right? Mm-hmm. And she felt like that was, what was the word she used?
She said it was a pointless distinction, or it didn't matter. What do you mean?
Okay, yes. Would you agree that maybe the distinction? I would argue that if somebody comes out and say, "Oh, this dude is behaving like a pedophile. He's a 15-year-old trying to fuck a 16-year-old," or like voicing how much he's into her or whatever, I would argue that trying to make the distinction between pedophilia and hebephilia in that moment is very bizarre.
If we're talking like 15 and 16-year-old, possibly, yeah. I just these words all mean like pretty rigid things, and it'd be nice to just use them as they're meant to be. Like, you can be an 18-year-old attracted to an 18-year-old that looks like a kid, and you're still a pedophile. I would argue, to the chagrin of a lot of maybe even my audience, I think a lot of people that obsess over certain types of Korean women are fucking pedophiles. That like the little fucking schoolgirl shit with the little kid looking things and the dresses. Oh, and I'm just this little boy and I've got like stuffed animals everywhere, blah, blah, blah. I think that's pretty fucking weird. But like, yeah, I just like, it's just weird when you see like 24-year-old guys like dating like a 17-year-old, right? And we can argue that like this is probably creepy, especially depending on how they met and everything. But like pedophile, it just doesn't even come. It's not describing anything that's happening here. It's not pedophilia. Pedophilia are people who want to fuck kids. Okay. Kids, real kids, not fake 12-year-old puberty kids, but those real smooth 10-year-old kids. Okay.
Right. Okay. I don't disagree. I just think that if somebody comes out and says, yo, this dude's acting like a pedophile, he's trying to go after this girl, and you come in and you interject like that.
Yeah, actually, I agree with that. I agree with you 100%. Okay. When somebody tells me they're polyamorous, I assume they're fucking weird and gross and probably creepy, okay? And I'm polyamorous, so I agree with you, all right? Listen, I make the same types of judgments. If somebody comes in, I'm assuming he's about to talk to me about libertarianism, legalizing weed, and why fucking 14-year-olds shouldn't be a crime. That's what I would make the same assumption in my head, sure. But that doesn't mean I'm not going to try to fight for like what the definition should actually be, so that we can have clear and concise conversations and understandings about like what the fuck is going on in society, right? Because it's weird because like there's a lot of weird stats around child abuse that people don't understand. Like, for instance, of all the people that abuse minors, like only 10% of them are actual card-carrying pedophiles. Most of them do it because it's crimes of opportunity. You're in a position of power.
Siblings.
Yeah, exactly. Or caretakers. Caretakers especially is a big one. Babysitters and stuff. So like, but if you're under the mindset that like, well, if they wouldn't fuck an 8-year-old, they wouldn't fuck my 14-year-old child. That's not true. And like this misunderstanding of what the words even mean, like actually inhibits people's ability to keep their children safe, which I think is bad.
But you know what's at the problem of this entire discussion? It's that people's mindset when it comes to child safety is so erratic, so reactionary, that anybody who tries to add nuance instantly looks suspicious. Why are you
Sure.
thinking about kids this much?
Yeah, of course.
Why are you trying to make these distinctions? What's in your closet, right? That's how they're approaching it. They're so reactionary. So you trying to parse the language, while I think it's good and it's important, I think you've realized throughout all these discussions about child abuse and stuff like this with most people, it's kind of pointless, is it not?
I don't want it to be, because when we've sacrificed so many words that don't mean anything anymore. And I'm in this area where like I said, this is a complaint I have. Like if somebody tells me they got raped, I don't even care, because I don't know what the fuck that means. Like you're gonna have to tell me a story now to make me think that you actually experienced something bad. Because rape to you might literally mean that like your boyfriend tried to finger fuck you when you were sleepy and you weren't into it and you said no and he stopped. Right? Okay, you know, congratulations. Like here's your fucking rape badge, put it in your Twitter profile and go collect some fucking points for it. But I don't give a fuck, okay? You're not gonna get any tears from me over it. Right? But we've like expanded and destroyed the definitions of so many fucking words that like nothing means anything anymore. And now here's my issue, okay? When we're trying to describe somebody, when we're trying to describe a situation, we're no longer trying to accurately describe the fact of the matter that what happened. We're taking what we perceive to be the moral disgust of what's happening, and now we're trying to find the words to match the morality. So for instance, Kyle Rittenhouse killed two people in self-defense and shot a third in Kenosha, right? But if my associate, that's factually what happened, okay? But if my association with Kyle Rittenhouse killing that was the most negative thing ever, when I try to reach for words to describe Kyle Rittenhouse, I'm not even looking at what's factually true. I'm just thinking, well, what is morally like bad there with murder? White nationalist, fascist, murderer, terrorist, and then boom, those are the words that I used to describe. But now whenever I'm trying to read at what people are saying about anybody, I don't even know if anybody's trying to describe it anymore. They're just looking for the words with the appropriate moral weight, and then they just kind of use those for everything, and now they don't mean anything anymore.
Yeah. I would say I actually agree entirely with this, in that the way that people use these words, in my opinion, isn't actually to accurately describe the morality, but it's just to pull at the extremes because they feel strongly about it. Because, you know, using the word hebephilia just doesn't have that impact. It doesn't have that same social connotation. Even though you feel it's just as bad as pedophilia in your head, you don't have the word hebephilia. Like most people don't know what it means. You get what I'm saying? So if you were to call somebody a hebephile, they're like, "What is this guy into hobos?" Like,
yeah, but even what you're saying there, you're reaching for this idea that like, well, we want to use words that are really bad. Why can't we just describe what happened and have that be bad? It can be bad without having to find the worst word to describe it.
Yes, I think this might be because you're autistic, but that's not how people function.
Yeah, but I'm telling you that how people function is destructive to their own political goals in society. So, like, we can call it autistic, but like, I can draw you a straight line from, I'm going to use fascist to describe every Republican. I'm going to use rape to describe every bad sex night. I can draw you a line right from there all the way over to, like, Breonna Taylor was shot in her bed while she was sleeping. You know, like all of these fake stories that get propagated. The Covington kids were white nationalists that were blah, blah, blah. Or, like, the BLM riots, like, murdered... I can draw you a straight line from there to there. So I don't think it's enough to just say, like, oh, well, this is just how language works. No, bullshit. We fought to change words, like historically. We fought to change different words. We can fight for this.
I don't disagree with you that it's not effective. I'm just telling you what the landscape is. But I agree with you.
I know what the landscape is. That's why I'm fighting, obviously. Yeah. Go.
I feel that way even about the word racist. I feel like folks have appropriated to every little instance where someone's like, I don't really think rap music is great. And someone's like, well, you know, like, I'm like, whoa, can we chill with what words? Because growing up for me, it meant something a lot different. For these kids, a microaggression is like some kind of intense racism. I'm like, chill out, right? So I agree with you that the way these words are being used, I agree with that portion. And I think overall on this we agree. You agree that in a moment where I'm saying, yeah, this person's being racist, and you're like, actually, they're being bigoted. I'm like, stupid fuck. Don't do that to me. You know what I'm saying? Don't try to use.
Sure, in that particular moment, yeah. But social media is not that moment. And if you feel that way, you need to log the fuck off.
Okay.
But like in that particular moment, like, yeah, if somebody came in like crying and they're like, oh my God, I think this fucking pedophile just raped my 15-year-old child. And I was like, oh, it's okay, but you mean a bibliophile or whatever, right? Yeah, obviously that would be fucking horrible, obviously.
Okay.
Sure.
Okay. Then I think in that case, we both agree in that regards. Yeah. I don't like the way that people use the words, and I think what you're trying to do is the right thing. I just personally think that the topic surrounding specifically kids, it's so volatile. I feel like there's just no headway to be made most of the time whenever people bring it up. I've watched you do debates with people where there's like 6 people on the panel, and you're having like a very sensible take in regards to child safety, and everyone's like, so you want to rape kids? And it's like, what the fuck?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but
So, yeah, I just wanted to bring that up, but I'll let you go with it. Keep fighting.
I love you, bud.
Hey, man, peace.
Be careful. I just feel like no words mean anything anymore at all. For anything ever. Oh, I'm sorry. I just make autistic noises. I can't help myself.